As an adjunct, I rarely turn down an opportunity to teach a new class. And I suspect many of us in this room have felt that compulsion at some time or another. Unfortunately, this impulse leads to an almost unimaginable teaching load. During my final year as an adjunct, I taught nearly 400 students over the course of 9 classes at 3 schools. Did I have you beat, Reba? No?
Yeah, you do, actually.
By the end of that semester, I ended up with a pile of exams that looked like that. So you could see 8 binder clips. One of those classes was an online class, which is probably the only reason I was stayed sane. My wife, who's home right now, thought I was very grumpy that year. So, and you can understand why. The sheer logistics of printing and grading these exams, let alone carrying them in my bag, was enough to make me rethink the entire process. While I continue to struggle with the implementation of online exams, I have found success in transitioning all stages of the paper grading process online. The benefits of doing so are especially appealing to adjuncts and to those on an adjunct-like schedule. In my talk today, I will illustrate a few key tools, all drawn from Google's free suite of applications. Tools that have helped me transition to an entirely online process for grading papers. And now I want to say that I know that there are many of you who refuse to grade things online, papers online, and that's fine, and this is not for you. But I suspect you're not teaching 400 students a semester with papers. So this is for the rest of you. Google Drive, a file storage and synchronization service, hosts many separate applications, 3 of which are essential to my paper writing and grading process. These services are free up to a point, and the free tiers are enough for my purposes, although more heavy power users may wish to pay for larger plans. My workflow involves 3 of these applications: Google Forms, Google Sheets, and Google Docs. To illustrate the utility of Google Forms, I'd like to show you one assignment, the dreaded concert review paper. After teaching an Intro to Music course simultaneously at 2 different schools, 2 of the 3, I sought different ways of synchronizing the 2 courses. One strategy was to combine this assignment into one Google form. As you can see here, I asked for just basic identifying information, first and last name, email address, and this is standard. I do weekly quizzes in all my classes, and I just have that as a default. Next, I asked for the student's school, and you just have a drop-down box, whether it was BC or Holy Cross, and which paper they were submitting, their first, second, or third. And these are all just pull-down choices. There are all kinds of ways to manipulate Google Forms. You can have rankable answers. You can have check all that apply. It's really a very flexible way to run tasks like this. Finally, I asked that they submit a link to their paper, assuming it exists already as a Google Doc, and that's the sort of main point of friction. Once they have clicked the submit button, they receive an automatic receipt of submission. So that is really helpful, sort of like a virtual secretary. After which, their information is deposited into a Google Sheets file, which is linked to the Google form but hidden from the students. Before Google Sheets, I would have been inundated with hundreds of emails, and I futilely try and get to inbox 0 all the time. I never can do it. So getting all of these cordoned off into a Google Sheet somewhere is fantastic. It really simplifies the organizing, the accessing, and the assessing of these papers. So it dumps it all into a spreadsheet that looks like this. And these columns are sortable. You can sort by date if you're looking to see if they have submitted things on time. You can sort by the name or the school of the author. You can even add in a column for grades, and you can sort by grades. So it really is a flexible tool, and it really helps with sanity as well. Google Forms also provides a substantial foundation for so-called scaffolded assignments, a term we've used already. In the next assignment, I show a final paper that required 4 stages: an annotated bibliography, a short musical analysis, a thesis statement, and the final project itself. Each of these stages has its own submission page launched from this initial Google form. the site allows me to spell out due dates for each stage. It even allows me to post pictures or actual videos, and I have a video here.
You are listening to the disembodied voice of Professor Ludwig.
That
just to give
walks
you a
them
tutorial
through.
How to
Thank you, Professor Ludwig. That walks them through the permissions stage, and that is, again, that's really the sort of trickiest part. But each link takes them to a corresponding submission portal, and you can add in extra details and dates and all that you like right in that portal. So this is all linked from one page. It really helps to sort of concentrate the students where they need to be. The creation of this Google form was slightly more complicated than the previous one. There are a few more stages in laying out the behind the scenes. You're linking, when they hit the submission, you link to another page so that you can either go to the submission portal for the bibliography or for the analysis or the thesis statement. And these are longer, so they require links to Google Docs. Shorter things, words, phrases, or even book titles, you can have them type right in. At this point, I hope the benefits of the Google form are clear. You control the student-facing page, including the relevant due dates and other pertinent information. Students receive a receipt upon each submitted stage, and the material is conveniently collected in one spreadsheet, not spread throughout various email folders and multiple school LMSs. Additionally, and my wife is a registrar, so you'll hear her speaking here, each stage of the submission is time-stamped so that you have an audit trail. She told me to say that. Thus far, we have seen how Google Forms and Google Sheets support the more procedural aspects of the process. But this system only works insofar as you are willing to grade the papers online too, right? Because you get all these virtual things. What are we going to do with them? As an adjunct, circumstances out of our control often demand the use of a more flexible approach, whether that means grading on the train to and from class, or knowing that your students lack the means to print out physical papers. Grading papers online, assuming they have access to internet, is often the best choice for an adjunct professor. And I found that this workflow functioned best when I require my students to submit their papers as a Google Doc. This requirement has many positives. Their papers will never get eaten by the proverbial dog, nor will they disappear into the bottomless pit of your desk or your backpack or your trunk, depending on whether or not you're a Rhodes Scholar, R-O-A-D scholar. Thank you. The highlight for me for Google Docs is the robust and collaborative system of editing and comment controls. As you work through each paper, students are emailed with your comments and can even resolve and reply to them. But the greatest advantage to grading online is the use of so-called text replacement applications. These apps allow me to add sentences and even paragraphs of comments with only a few keystrokes. The cream of the crop here is a text expander, one word, but it's pretty expensive. It's about $45 for the application, so it's out of my price range. There are other alternatives too, but Apple's built-in operating system includes a free alternative, and it works perfectly fine for this process. So you can find this in the current macOS system preferences keyboard text. On iOS, you can find it in a very similar place. As you can see here, I have a handful of so-called cues. Words are phrases that expand into more substantial points. And I wrote my dissertation partially on Hepikowski and Dossi, so you see H and D got a lot of heavy use in addition. So in my copy editing pass, the most common reoccurring complaints I find are topic sentences, the use of contractions, and just plain awkward writing. Once you identify the issue, you select the text and add the cue and a comment. That cue is then automatically replaced by the replacement text that you choose. So here's an example. This is one paragraph, just sort of drawn at random. Here's a bad topic sentence. So I type in TTOPIC, just my sort of cue for topic sentence, and expands out to a couple sentences, right? Here's just awkward writing. AWK expands out. Here for the contraction. And so you come up with cues that you can remember. So I try to just double up the first letter. That usually is enough to work for me. So this is one paragraph, 3 errors, 3 words. expanded out to over 50 words of content. This is a tremendous benefit for my grading process. It really just helps save time. A benefit you couldn't do if you were marking by hand, unless you have massive stamps, I guess. So, right, print out. So, hold on one sec. Let's see. Using the workflow outlined here greatly enhanced my ability to cope with an inherently overwhelming teaching load as an adjunct. Using Google's apps as a one-stop shop is a really powerful workflow. They allow data sorting by columns, they allow you to frame the assignment in the Google Forms portal, and they allow collaborative editing in each Google Doc. Whether or not you're an adjunct, I hope that this workflow, even in part, finds its way into your grading process. Thank you.
Next, we have Jonathan Waxman.
You're on Reba's computer?
No, he's
No.